Okay. How are you?
Great, thanks. I said thoroughly enjoying the house.
Yeah, great. So probably the first question for me is, why did you do it? You know, so people are so concerned about, like, they live in a home and the home may not be working for them, and then they're going, oh, if we knock it over and build a new home, the cost of it, we'll have to move out, find somewhere to rent, and it's a lot, especially when you've lived in a home for how many years were you in the previous home?
Nearly 50 years.
And you built the home?
We did, yeah.
Not with a nail bag and a trowel, but you
we
had
did,
the home
we
built,
did, that's
so
right.
50 years.
And it was very hard to part with it, but we really had no choice because it was literally falling apart. We had big gaps in the walls and all sorts of other issues, and we'd been burying our head in the sand for 10 years, just trying to pretend that we didn't need half the house. And then my mother passed away and my brother and I sold her house, and we suddenly found ourselves in the situation where we actually had enough money, if we were careful, to do something. And we looked at shifting. From an economic point of view, it was probably more sense to sell this place and shift a bit further out of town, but we didn't want to. We liked the neighbourhood. We were able to keep most of our backyard, and so we decided that we'd knock it over and start again. And the first house was sustainable for a 1970s house, but I figured we could do it much better, and so I started doing research and attending another function about how to use hempcrete to build houses. We found Griff, and the rest is history.
It is.
So
Yeah,
as soon as we met you, we knew that you were the man for us. And
thanks,
so 6 months of planning with you, and then 7 months of building, and here we are in a lovely new house.
Yeah,
it's
fantastic.
working wonderfully for us.
I think back in the old days it was called common sense with the north facing and things like that. But I said, as you know, it's lifted to an entirely different level.
Yes, yeah, it's interesting because I think I did my first passive solar home. I started designing in 1976. I built it in 1978, so not that long after really you
Yes,
built.
72 we built.
And the physics is the same now as it was then. It's just there was a poor understanding of it. But you're right, I call it uncommon sense because it's become uncommon. Interesting what you said before, Wendy, about like you've kept the backyard, because a part of the brief was to make sure your block is still subdividable, so you can subdivide this and build at the back again.
Yes.
And so that meant you've got this nice, you know, pot of money buried in the backyard.
$600,000 worth of veggie
Yeah,
patch.
that's right. That's expensive veggie patch.
And that was actually, that came out of a conversation with you because I hadn't thought of it.
Shift it forward and shift it slightly
but
to the side.
it was your suggestion that we would be able to do that, and we wanted to rebuild on the same block. We wanted to keep as much of the garden as we could, but we also wanted to get rid of all the lawn and put in a lot more natives, and the idea was that this house was to be as maintenance free as we could possibly make it, and allow our first house we thought was going to be our forever house. This one's definitely our forever house, and we love the fact that not only did you design it with sustainable design, but it's built to universal design. So there's a lot of easy things that will make it great for us to live in forever.
Yeah, ageing in place is a critical part of sustainable design from my point of view, so that we're not just allowing for a restrained carbon future, but we're also allowing for the spaces to open up and to give us access, and no trip points, wider doorways, flush thresholds to showers, walk-in showers, all of that. So and it's not just that as we age in place, it's considering everybody else in our community, as well as some young people say to me that oh yeah, but you know, a long way until I will probably move house by then. I said, what about your parents? What about your grandparents?
That's right. Yeah.
You know, so therefore it's an inclusive idea, not an exclusive idea. So a critical part of design is universal access at varying different levels, what people want. And the cost of it is very small if you consider it in the original design. Sometimes almost impossible later on, or very expensive later on if it's not considered as a part of the original design. So let's talk about cost. I mean, let's talk about, again, you set a budget for the house originally. We set a budget together. So
We did.
how did we, I can't remember. I know, so how did we go on the budget?
So we set a budget, a really low budget of 220,000.
Yep.
The quote came in at closer to 240,
Yep.
and then we've added a few extra bits and pieces ourselves. So I think the quote from the builder, including all the groundworks,
Yes.
which is in addition to
Yes,
the house.
in addition to the original budget.
Yeah, that's
Yep,
right. So
yep.
that's a totally separate budget. But I think including that, the total thing was a bit under 270,000.
Yeah, yeah. So that's total.
And
'cause
that's a total including all of the
Demolition,
the
workworks
demolition is
yeah,
a separate
that
thing
would've been
again. But all
separate.
of the groundworks with the stormwater and all of that, other clearing and levelling and so on, which would be a separate budget, that was included. And when you look at the cost of buying a spec house, maybe you could buy a spec house of this size, which is around about the 200 square metre, for the same price, or maybe even a bit cheaper, possibly. But the minute you start talking an individual design house at $100,000, and it doesn't have all of the features that this house has, like the insulated double brick walls, the 2 lots of insulations in the ceiling, and all of the other extra wide doors and other things that would be extreme extras, which weren't for us. So we think we got a wonderful house for a very, very low budget, so we're really thrilled.
Well, it's important for people to understand you always have at least 3 budgets. Your site costs,
Yes.
including demolition, like in your case, the house cost itself, and then the third cost is your finishes. You know, floor coverings, window treatments, landscaping, which you've done a fantastic job of, by the way. And I love the book you've done on it. It's fantastic. So very important to understand, and very important to stick to those budgets. So tell us about the result. In other words, how's it turned out for you? So you've been in the house for how long now?
We've been in the house for just a little bit over 12 months now, and it's working really well. So I've done a check on the last 12 months of our budget in the previous house for power. We had gas, hot water storage, and we had gas cooking, and the rest was electricity. We had 1.6 kilowatt
That was in the previous
in the
house.
previous house.
Yeah.
We had 1.6 kilowatt solar
Yep.
system on the roof, and our total monthly account for power in the last 12 months for that house averaged out was $110 per month, for
Including charges. That
both,
is.
including the service charge.
Yep.
And with the new house, with no solar panels on the roof yet, but with solar hot water and having gone totally electric, we're now paying $40 a month.
Yeah, right.
So
And that's and no PV cells to offset
no
it. So, yeah,
no
so-
cells to offset. So it's proving to be very comfortable. We've never yet once turned on our booster for our hot water system, and last year. So the first year we shifted in, we actually didn't. We decided to focus on making a garden, and so we actually lived in the house pretty much camping with very little furniture for the first 6 months. I had to make the curtains myself. I'm still getting around to doing all of that, but so through that first winter and half the first summer, we had no curtains whatsoever. So I remember you telling us that the house is only it's a tool and it's only as good as the user. And so we broke every rule in the book during that first 12 months. But the house, even with no curtains, didn't get down to below, I think the lowest it ever got inside overnight was 17 degrees. But that was only on the very rare occasions.
Yeah.
Mostly we
This
went
was
from...
in winter.
In winter, middle
Yeah.
of winter, we
Yeah.
went from... So in midwinter we went from 18, 19 degrees overnight to anywhere between 21 and 24 degrees during the day.
Yeah.
And in summer we went from very low 20s, so maybe 20, 21 overnight, up to 27 during the day on the really hot days. And in heat wave conditions, there were a couple of days where mid-afternoon it got to 30, but we have ceiling fans. Turn the ceiling fan on, it makes you feel 3 degrees cooler. And when we did live in the old house and I had was first cycle air conditioning, I had that set to 27 degrees. So we were comfortable.
Yeah, right.
What you've got to remember, of course, is Jandakot, which is our closest weather station, got 0.3.
So yes, it's a little bit colder
And
here.
we're
than
sitting
the
here
Perth.
with T-shirts
That's
and
right.
Yeah.
on, etc. So yeah, so interesting.
So it's worked really well for us, and we haven't needed. I think there's been one day in the whole time we've been here that I thought, oh, if I had heating, I might have turned it on today. But that's pretty impressive. So we're very happy with the way it's worked.
And interesting too, because we had this conversation earlier on. So at the moment, we have the sun coming in here. It's about just on 2 o'clock. So the sun's starting to go across. But when I had a look, because of this table, large table, and in the original design brief, you wanted that performance, which every block has a limitation about its performance, and other things give it limitations. But also we decided to keep the subdivisional block. So as a consequence, we lost space on the side for the driveway and parking for future. But that meant we had to compress the house and make sure, but that's worth 600,000 in the backyard, so probably a worthwhile thing to do, much more than the house cost you from a future. And also that limited your performance. So therefore in winter you have, on a house of this size, you'd want around 70% of glass on the north side, and you probably have about, I would say, 45% of what should have been around 70%. So therefore, this is for winter. So therefore, your performance is winter. It's not bad considering. But also, when we looked at this table, of course, this table, when we worked out the chairs and the table where it sits, blocks out about 30% of the sun coming in this main area. And so what we're going to do later on is we're going to move the table back a metre, which we have. We've got plenty of space to do it. Take the chairs off that side, put them on this side, because it's a very big table which you don't use that much, and that will increase your performance in this area by changing the furniture. Just that 3 minutes worth of work will change, and you'll pick up around about, even though we'll increase this area by about 30%, you'll increase the performance and the heating in here probably around about 15 to 20%. So,
which will be impressive,
Yeah.
given that we're already comfortable in here.
So with summer, so the summer temperature, as you say, it got up to 30 at one stage with no drapes, but also no shading outside.
No.
Which we're going to have a chat about later on, because
Yes.
we're looking at putting the sail shades up for summer. So therefore, because in a spot like this, you've done a really good job of the native garden, because that breaks up that diffuse radiant heat, but you still get diffuse radiant heat, and you need to shade at least 3.5 metres away from the home. So you had no shading there, except the normal eaves, which don't give you much protection, if any at all, realistically.
No, so they were fine in the early part of summer, because we had the sun right ahead. But as summer, that's why I had to get busy and make the curtains. So so they're half made. We haven't made the front curtains yet, but we've got the block out bit behind. And it was very helpful to have those, because we were able to pull those across, because as the sun, by February, mid-February, when it's getting really hot, the sun's starting to come in through the window. And so it was helpful to have the blinds to pull across during the day. But certainly the shade sails will help. They will make a big difference.
So if you did it again, not saying you're going to, if you did it again,
Wash your mouth out with soap, Griff.
if you did it again, what would you do differently?
We'd struggle to find anything that we'd do differently.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
okay.
we're very happy with the way the house is working for us.
Yeah,
and
I couldn't think of anything.
Yeah, right.
Wendy particularly is flogged to death. She researches everything to death.
Which you should be thankful for, by the way.
I stepped back. There should only be one chief. But things, as you say, the garden, making certain that the garden that's up close to the windows on the north side, that's low, so it doesn't throw the shape like that. I think you're making comments to us originally about how your trees, which can impact, of course, coming in from so deciduous trees, what impact they have on the garden. I wouldn't
it's worked well for us. I mean, it's about lifestyle. And I mean, I was brought up in a family where you make do and you recycle, and that was just part of life. And so all our furniture is, pretty much all our furniture is recycled. It's come from salvage yards and op shops and old family items that have been handed down. And we've tried to keep some of the items from the old house and recycle those as well. And we managed to keep the studio, and they were going to knock down the studio, the original studio, external studio was attached to the bathroom wall, the laundry wall, and they were going to knock that down for us. And I said, no, leave it. And we've turned that into a backdrop for a little patio area. Artworks, being an artist, when I make artworks, I use available resources, and a lot of it's old recycled materials. And so building a house this way just completely suited the style of life that we have.
I think, Griff, you touched on very briefly about when you're getting older and things like that. So it's not only for looking after your oldie goldies, but it's
rehab situation for younger people as well. So I don't think there's anything that we'd really change. We're very happy with it.
Fantastic. So I think that's great. So good result all round. So what else? Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Actually, probably the fact that you suggested that we keep the block so that we could subdivide later if we wanted to, and therefore we've shifted the house 3 metres forward. And so what we've done is we've actually stolen the front verge, and that's become our front garden. And so we have the first thing we put in our garden. So we built the garden ourselves out the front, or all the new area that we have 3 more metres out the back and out the front, and we built that from the rock. So it's from bedrock. So
Great rock.
We have a lovely big moss rock that is big enough to sit on, and then we built the garden around that. But that sits right at the back of the garden, but that's actually as far forward as we could possibly put it, because that's where our original front verge started. And then we've taken the whole of the front verge and turned that into garden as well, which City of Melville is encouraging. So and it's surprising how many of the people in the suburb have stopped to chat to us whilst we've been doing it. And maybe we might spark an idea of and it's about getting the birds, encouraging the birds, providing avenues. We've got parks nearby, and we're hoping that our yard with 200 odd natives in it is a haven where the birds can stop off and help provide those corridors that's important for the wildlife.
And it's beautifully laid out. I mean, it's classic. It'll stay like it is for such a long period of time with those natives, and I love the way you've laid it out. And no wonder people stop. I think that a lot of people can see, because a lot of people think that native gardens can be untidy. When you look at that, with the way you've run with the gravel and the way you've put the stones and the way you've put the steel barriers around, it's stunning. So you can see the artist in doing that, and the worker, the artist and the worker.
Yes, so, and that's another thing we've done. We kept we kept a lot of the old bricks and paving from the old house. And first thing Ian had to do when he came back in was to repave the whole of our side passageway and all the way down to the clothesline behind the studio. And yeah, so he's worked really, really hard. But we both worked hard in the garden, and people say that a native garden, maybe believe that a native garden is maintenance free, but
No.
it's not. You still need to work in it, but it gives us so much pleasure. We love it.
I think
Love
also
going out there.
the garden outside, actually, again, the number of people who stop and talk about that and then talk to us about the house,
Yeah.
and the number of people who've actually had come through this house and go, wow.
It's built community. I mean,
Yeah, great.
we've met so many new people. It's been great.
Yeah, no, fantastic. And about that, because you're building community, you build a house that's actually starting to pull the community together, which is fantastic. Look, and in the future, at the moment it's costing you about $40 a month to run the home. If you put a very small PV system on the roof, you'll be positive in energy. You'll be basically putting energy into your neighbours' houses, basically.
Yes.
So, and it means you've got the backyard, you know, $600,000 buried in the backyard, and you'll have no running costs for the home. So I think you're in a good position. So, and look, thank you for choosing us, you know, to work with you.
Oh, it was such an easy, it was
So-
such an easy decision. We felt really blessed to have met you, and
And for two of us to come from separate areas and both go,
Yeah, so that first evening where we did encounter you,
Oh, yeah.
whilst everybody was chatting afterwards,
I talked to you earlier.
we went in different directions, and then we got together and we both said, we both have to. I was saying, we have to go and talk to that fellow, and Ian's saying, you've got to come and talk to this guy that I was just speaking to. So yeah, we knew even before we made that first meeting with you at your office, we knew that we'd found the person. And
then the
it was a
suggestion you build
smooth-
us.
Yeah, it's
Dan
such a.
Mark came on board, and they were very easy to work with.
So we had a bit of a panic towards the end, because that was when COVID was unfolding around us, and so our supervisor was great. He pulled out all the stops, and so we had multiple people scrambling all over the house, and he got us the key a month earlier than he was planning to. So we managed to sneak in the door just before the lockdown happened that first time round. And
But I'm going to grab you now, and you had a few suggestions which you could help us with, like moving this table and.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
let's do
yeah,
that.
yeah, let's move the table.
Do you want to?
Yeah,
It'd be interesting to know what the temperature of the floor is. now,
Yes,
and,
I could just check. So, so interesting. So out of the shop. So look at the temperature in here at the moment, and on the floor, and it's 33.6, and the outside temperature is supposed to be 19 today. So 33.6 on the floor. The wall temperature will be the interesting one, because the true temperature of the room is 22.2, but the floor temperature is 33.4.
Oh, and we haven't got the dark tiles either.
We have got dark tiles. We have medium coloured tiles in the front of the house, but we went with the darker ones at the back.
And it's interesting because, again, perception of tiles. When you look at these tiles, with the sun coming in, they're a platinum look.
Yes.
But again, people look at dark tiles and say, oh no, too dark for the home. So it's great because the two have different opinions about it. That's how people are. When they see them with the sun coming in, they're amazed at how light they are.
Oh, absolutely. It's quite
So,
dramatic, the difference between...
So don't be afraid of dark tiles.
No.
Because they're not dark in winter, and in summer, when the sun's excluded, there's so much light in Perth bouncing around the room, it makes no difference.
Yes, no, we haven't had any issue at all with going with the dark tiles.
So what would be the temperature sort of basically out from the sun?
So behind us, out of the sun, it's 20.9 degrees. So therefore, where the heat comes in, it's going into the slab, conducting into the slab. It releases long wavelength back into the room, so going through Some goes back in the floor, some goes into the walls, and convective heat sits up there, goes into the walls. So you've got a combination. So therefore, as we move through the home from north to south, you'll start having a diminishing temperature. If we look at the southern side, we're in the dining area with the kitchen behind us and a lounge over the other side there. And so we look at over the other side, and you look at the wall on the other side of the room, so which is around about 6.5 metres away, 7
Yes.
metres away. It's 21.7.
Wow.
So
Which is-
therefore, it's still a comfortable temperature. over there.
Absolutely, yes.
So the ideal is to have 2 rooms deep, north to south. In this room, you're 2 rooms deep, and because we compress the house to make the money for the block available, and to have a great garden as well, but a future savings, which is compounding, buried in your backyard, it means that you have a slight deficit in performance. Although you probably don't see it that way because it performs pretty well for you. But from my point of view, I would expect on a day like today, and the overall house, I would expect this area to be about another 2, maybe 2.5 degrees warmer, and I'd say the other side about the same. But again, it's still comfortable compared to the particular temperatures. We've had a really big cold spell.
2 or 3 weeks
it's
of
been,
cloud and
well, we've had temperatures below in the low singles
Yeah,
for
that's right.
the last couple of weeks, and it's the shortest time of the year as well. So it's
absolutely fantastic.
shortest days and sun very low, and our studio out the back getting in the way of the sun on the floor. So
And it's still performing.
and it's
so
still
with all the
performing
weathers,
well.
yeah,
So we're
great.
delighted.
So look, before we go, there's one question I have, and that is in the bathroom, even though you'd lose some sun, because we've got the bathroom set up so a low allergen, because low allergens are part of this with your area and the ensuite. So the sun comes in on the floor, and what's it like from a cleaning point of view? Or should I ask Ian? No, just kidding.
You can. You suggested with the. For starters, the access is fantastic.
Yeah.
The slope in again works well. The glass
The
cleaning
lights,
is
right?
just a breeze.
And the floor, do you get much moisture staying in there with the sun?
None.
It's pretty good. It dries again because the studio's in the way there.
Yes,
it doesn't
we do
dry
lose
quite
some.
as effectively as
yeah.
it would do otherwise.
Yeah.
But yes, it's really good. I don't think we're ever likely to have issues with mould because
And
it does
remembering
get nice and warm in there.
Yeah, we don't have the windows which you suggested.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Well, we do.
But
Yeah.
close to it.
We didn't go for clear windows. We did go
Yeah,
for
opaque.
some
Yeah.
privacy. So we
sure.
do have.
Just tell me, Griff, how much difference would it make? We've got security screening on here, which is
Yeah.
actually the heavy duty screening. How much difference would that make also to
In this
possibly-
area, those 2 security screens may be 5% in winter and no difference in summer.
summer?
And they're wonderful in summer. So
Yeah.
that was one of the
Cross-flow.
extra costs that we added on.
Yeah.
We put security mesh instead of standard fly wire mesh, and in summer it's fantastic.
Yeah.
So you designed us a tiny little window in the front of our lounge area, and we love that window anyway because we can be in the back garden and see straight through to the street. And but it's amazing. You only need this tiny little window and a bit of disruption in the direction of your airflow, and a larger
The
window
Fremantle
for
Doctor.
the
Straight
wind to
through.
go out,
Very
and it cools it down wonderfully.
Yeah, really important to understand that where the air comes in, you want a small opening where it goes out, a wider opening. Otherwise, you compress the air and you slow it through the home. So, no, really good point.
Yeah.
So, no, that's great. So, thanks.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
no,
you.
no, my
Yeah.
pleasure. So,
Yeah, we're delighted, really delighted to be here and to have such
And sung your praises.
a lovely house.
Yeah, great.
Yes,
Thanks, then. I think cup of tea time.
Cup of tea time.
sounds
Yes.
like a
What do
good
you think?
idea.